Good morning. I'm happy to open today our 2 days event, Business Opportunities between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. I don't know if you are familiar with all the actions that we can summarize today about the last 12 months when we open a strong desk together between Israel and Dubai, Bahrain, and I think that it's a first bridge between the countries, trying to use all the opportunities that we have to combine the economics between Israel and the UAE. We see that over the past year, there have been a number of meetings between businessmen from Israel and businessmen from Dubai and from Abu Dhabi. Only 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was a big event between Bank Hapoalim and business people from the UAE, trying to summarize what we can do together, what we can, where we can invest, and in what channels will be, the best way to start the meetings between the country to meet the target and to meet the needs between the economics. And if I will try to summarize the meeting and going back to summary from the CEO of Bank Hapoalim in 2 words, it's amazing opportunities. Many companies in Israel today, during the business thinking for the coming years, are strategically examining the options and willing to cooperation with companies and investors from the UAE. Only 2 weeks ago, we have meetings between Lior Shachar, partner in our office, and Omer Margalit, a director, both of them from the high-tech cluster, meetings with the stock exchange, meeting with underwriters, trying to see if there is an option to take Israel companies either to the UAE market, to the stock exchange market, or maybe to find some ways to be a kind of a bridge to local companies coming to the Israeli business stock exchange, trying either to think about option to raise bonds or to raise money in Israel. Maybe it can be a good opportunity for those companies. I think that if I will try to summarize the last 12 months, the main point is to understand in what kind of business we can find good solutions between us, the 2 locations. And mainly, we can focus, at least we have to start focusing on the agriculture. We can start thinking about the fintech, or generally looking at the high-tech environment and to find ways to find interesting options, either to UAE investors to invest in Israeli countries, or to find some way to connect the activity. And I think that it will be kind of a message to the next 2 days. It is important for us to understand that nothing is simple. And no process is a quick process, immediate process. The Israelis that we are trying in 1 or 2 weeks to finalize stories and to finalize a way, to find a way to connect and to work together. I think that it's not, to be realistic, we will have to be patient and to find a way in order to promote the joint activities. We need to be patient. We need to be, or to create a mutual trust and understanding what the needs of each party. I think that only for, to start the next 2 days, we will be able to get today and tomorrow some more information about the opportunities, and to understand that BDO can be a strong bridge between the two countries to find the opportunities, to support, and to be a kind of first step in a process like this. I want only to say thank you very much to all of you, and hopefully it will be a productive 2 days in trying to find the ways together. Now I'm happy to pass the floor to further discussion to Con Brian that will continue the session today. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you very much, Danny. Thank you to BDO Israel for inviting us to do this, and for all of your team for the work you've done to put everything together. This is indeed a time of great opportunity, I think, for businesses in UAE and Israel, and BDO can be the centre of making things happen. So let's hope everybody gets a lot out of the next 2 days. So I'll dive straight into what we're going to talk about today. If we look first of all at the presenters we have today, I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but I would like to welcome Abdulaziz Al-Mullah, who is the Head of Tax Affairs at the Department of Finance and also the CEO of the Dubai Financial Support Fund. We're very, very pleased that he's agreed to join us today, brings a great deal of experience and expertise. Myself, I've been involved in tax in the UAE for a very long time, and Deepak Chakingal, who is the BDO UAE Head of Relations. He runs our business development and marketing services. For many years, though, he was advising businesses on the corporate advisory side, setting up business in the UAE. So he brings a lot of insight into the challenges that businesses moving into the UAE face. The UAE itself, I'm sure lots of you know the country. Many of you will have visited. We occupy a very nice position on the southwest end of the Arabian Gulf. We have endless sunshine and very nice beaches. It's a very modern, connected city with great country with great infrastructure. It's a very mixed population. It's a population of about 10 million people. Most of those people are expatriates, many from India, Pakistan, Philippines, but we have people from all over the world, from Europe, the Americas, Southeast Asia, everywhere. And the population that we have is one of the great strengths. There's many, many skills and abilities available. The currency, I'm sure you know, is the UAE dirham, which is pegged to the US dollar. So it's a very stable and safe currency. Now, moving on very quickly, and I will hand over to Abdulaziz. Abdulaziz, welcome. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Brian, and it's my pleasure to be presenting this part, which I hope everyone in this session will enjoy, inshallah. My name is Abdulaziz, and I work for the Department of Finance, and I hope that what I'll be presenting is useful to all my colleagues in Israel. So I'll start by saying shalom. I hope I pronounced it correctly. So, Brian, if you give me some access so that I can share my screen.
Yeah, you're given the access, you can share your screen.
Excellent. So, So can you see my screen, guys?
Not it.
Not yet.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So again, I'll start my presentation by quoting His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who is the Vice President and Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates and ruler of Dubai, where he said that throughout history, the UAE has opened its doors to millions of people looking to pursue their dreams and better their lives. The Golden Card is our way to welcome all those seeking to be a part of the UAE's success story and making it a second home. So, I mean, always a success starts from its top. So head of the pyramid is His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, and we always are proud to be part of his team. So, why do we, Dubai now welcomes foreign investors to fully own their mainland business in a significant amendment to a decades-old commercial companies law stipulating that an Emirati nationals from UAE must be the majority shareholder with 51% of the total shares. Now, more than 1,000 business activities are now applicable for 100% foreign business ownership. So, what are the reasons? Why do investors need to invest in Dubai, or why do they consider Dubai as an investment opportunity? There are many reasons, and due to the time constraint given by our colleagues in video, I'll focus on top reasons to invest in Dubai. It's an open economy, strategic location, cutting-edge infrastructure, ranks #1 in the world's World Bank Logistics Performance Index for MENA region. So let's talk about each in further details. So, open economy. Dubai has a resilient and dynamic economy with an aim to make the city a dynamic engine of economic growth. The strategic plan laid by the Dubai government, have enabled Dubai to become a diversified, investor-centric and innovation-driven economy. Dubai has earned its reputation for being political and social and economic stability, making it one of the world's most attractive places to do business. And you can see that beautiful picture here where it shows the beautiful day, which we do have now. It's a very lovely time. A stable macroeconomic environment and sustainable economic policies and superior growth strategies have fueled Dubai's outstanding economic performance and diversification. And I believe Brian has already mentioned that we have more than 200 nationalities working in this small geographical area. This proves that this is a place where people would love to work and stay. And we want to continue that for the future as well. Connecting worlds. Now, Dubai has future-ready airports and ports, providing access to 2/3 of the world's most attractive growth markets. So it's very close to India, which has more than billion people living in that area. So it's very close to these growing economies. Dubai has developed active gateways into the region for business, commerce, and tourism. So by opening a business in Dubai, you'll have access to GCC as well, so that you can be considered as a UAE company doing business in the GCC region. 70% of Fortune 500 companies choose Dubai as their regional headquarter. Dubai is the home of the busiest airport by international passenger traffic. Dubai Airport enhances Dubai's geographic advantage by providing safe, secure, and environmentally responsible airports. So this is like one of the places that people should at least should visit at least once in a lifetime. Again, Emirates Airlines complements this strategy by connecting the world, and through their global hub, they operate modern, efficient, and comfortable aircraft, and their culturally diverse workforce. So they are more than, as Brian said, people from around the world work for Emirates. Emirates will launch a daily non-stop flight between Dubai and Tel Aviv starting 6 December. Israeli travelers will be able to connect safely and seamlessly and efficiently to Emirates' global route network over 120 destinations. So this is like a good news for our colleagues in Israel by choosing Emirates and coming to Dubai and continue their journey to the rest of the world. Cutting edge infrastructure. I mean, this is one of the photos which I can show. There are many others as well. Dubai continues to build sophisticated and reliable infrastructure designed to enable uninterrupted economic growth. Dubai ranks first globally in the airport transport facilities, pedestrian friendliness, and public transport reliability. It is one of the world's most connected cities with future-proofing built into all new projects. Dubai has spent 140 billion on roads transport in 15 years. This shows the commitment given by the government to ensure that there is uninterrupted economic growth for the city. The length of the road network increased from 8,715 lane kilometers in 2006 to 18,255 lane kilometers in 2020. This again proves the support that the government is giving to the business community by allowing them to easily do their business and transport their goods without being interrupted by the infrastructure constraints. Outstanding trade and logistics. Again, the roads complements the trade and logistics that Dubai is having. Dubai is the global leader in the international trade, providing business with the friendly export-import environment, supported by regional and international trade agreements and efficient logistics services. Jebel Ali Port is a gateway hub that enables trade across the region and beyond. It is the largest seaport in the Middle East and ranks among the top 10 container ports of the world. The port's container handling capacity has grown from 18 million TEU, which is 20 foot equivalent units, to 22.4 million TEU. Jebel Ali Port has voted the best seaport Middle East for 25 consecutive years. So this shows, the commitment that the team is putting and the effort to ensure that the businesses dealing with the ports are satisfied with its services. Now I'll move from doing business. Why do investors need to choose Dubai, to another topic, which is public-private partnership, which is something is evolving in the region. And this is something that the government is seriously looking at. The growth that Dubai has seen in the past and its ambitious strategic vision is underpinned by the need to continue making large-scale investments in both social and economic infrastructure. And this cannot be done by one side. The government needs, let's say, contribution also from the private, where both parties benefit from the growth that Dubai is seeing. This results in ever-increasing budgetary demands, both in terms of funding and financing. It is recognized both within the Dubai government and in the wider capital market that Dubai will have to continue to evolve, innovate, and reform the manner in which these large financial commitments are funded through alternative financing structure. And this is where the PPP plays an active role to ensure that the gap is filled by this kind of partnership. This alternative financing can also serve as a catalyst for the attainment of additional strategic imperatives, such as economic diversification, foreign and direct investment, and encouragement of local entrepreneurship and industry, and the pursuit of the sustainable economic growth that is both guarded against any volatility or and is not also resource intensive. Now, all above, I mean, all of the above that has been mentioned earlier requires the leveraging of local and international private sector expertise, efficiency, and innovation. To this end, the Dubai government has issued law number 22 in 2015, which is also known as the PPP law, to provide a legal framework for government agencies to enter into partnership with the private sector. And I'll take you to the website. I don't know if you can see that website.
Yeah, we can see that.
You can see the website. Okay, this is the website. I'm sorry. Okay. You can see the website, Deepak?
Yes, yes, we can see that.
Okay, this is from the Department of Finance of Dubai government, where there is a pipeline where this website shows the pipeline that the government is having of projects worth 25 billion with 29 salient projects and in 5 strategic sectors. This is where the government is now exploring the PPP potential investments. So these are the sectors: healthcare sector, public transport and infrastructure, roads, infrastructure and public amenities, utilities and waste management. So these are the list of the sectors and the projects along in each sector. So if I choose one of these projects, you'll see that they are in the implementation phase. So this project is in the implementation phase, and the authority that is involved with this PPP is the Dubai Health Authority, which is responsible for the health services in Dubai. And this is a 5 years project tenor, and this is gonna start in 2021, which is indicative. So this is like almost been the partner from the private sector has been chosen, and they are going to execute. So if we choose another program, where you'll see that the program is in the procurement phase, this is where the government is looking for a potential partner where they can support the program, and this is the description for the project that is needed for a private contribution. Again, the government is not looking for the financial support, rather than the efficiency that will come from the private by giving their expertise, because this is where the private will add value, because this is what the government is seeking here, is to have the expertise from the private sector to run these programs and make it more efficient, so that the economy will benefit from this partnership. And there are a list of list of programs that can be also explored by our colleagues in Israel, that if they are interested in any of these projects that are available on the website of the Department of Finance, which is daf.gov.ae. There is a link where you have to choose this public-private partnership, and this is where you'll see the public law, if you are interested to go through the law itself. And this law protects both the public and the private partners in the partnership. And these are the pipelines. And if there are any programs to be explored, I mean, we at DOF also encourage investors by sending their inquiries to this website, where they can give ideas if it is not in the list. And they can also communicate directly. If we just go to the sector here again, they can also, let's say if it's healthcare sector, they can also communicate directly to with the authority itself. So let's say if there is a program that is being proposed by the private sector, and they want to invest in a program that is not on the list, but they see a huge potential for that program, successful implementation for that program, they can directly communicate with the website, the email given in each sector. So this, for the health sector, this is the website provided by the DHA. If you are having an interest in the public transportation programs. You can also directly communicate with the Road and Transport Authority that is also responsible for these kind of programs. So the waste management is Dubai municipality, where you see that the DM investment at dubaimunicipality.gov.ae. So this is also where if you want to show or give interest, if there's a program that is not on the list, or if you want to be part of that program, you can communicate directly with the concerning body. And with this, I will just conclude my presentation by giving another quote by His Highness, Sheikh Mohammed, where he said that whatever suits business, the business community suits Dubai. So I'll conclude my presentation, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about Dubai, and wish all the success to our colleagues in BDO, especially the BDO Israel, for this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Abdulaziz. That was very interesting. And I thought, particularly on the PPP side, I think it was a wonderful example of the way the UAE is very proactive, and the technology that's available and the way the website works makes everything very available to everyone. So I thought that was a really interesting talk. So thank you very much. And thank you once again for speaking to us today. Thank you. Okay, so I think we now move on. I think, Deepak, if you could share your screen for the next set of slides.
Yes, I'll do that. Give me a second.
Okay, I think we can see those.
1 second. Sorry, I'm not able to move my slides. Give me a minute. Sorry about it. Just give me a minute. I'm just fixing this. Yeah, it's on.
Okay, great. Thank you. In that case, over to you, Deepak, to take us through the next part of the talk.
Yes, thank you so much, Brian, and thank you, Abdulaziz, for your wonderful presentations, which give us quite a lot of information about PPP partnerships. Thank you about it. So moving on, now we have touched based on what are the investment opportunities available in the UAE. The next point is what are the setups options available for people who wish to register a business in the UAE. So on a very high level, there are 3 types of setups which can be done in the UAE, which is companies which can be set up in the mainland, companies which can be set up as a free zone entity in a free zone. And the third option is companies which can be set up in an offshore. In my later slide, I'll explain each of those things. To start up with, establishing a business in the mainland. So these are for people who wish to do business in the local market. For example, if you're a trading entity, or if you're a service industry, for example, a consultancy firm who wants to provide business without any restriction to all people resident in the UAE, or any companies registered in the UAE, then your best ideal option would be setting up a business in the mainland. Now, earlier days, as Abdulaziz mentioned, one point what investors, when they were coming to UAE, what they had in mind is that a UAE national was associated with all the setups what you do in the mainland. So there was a bit worry from the investors, because a UAE national was either part as a equity or they were part as a service agent. So there was a bit worry from the investors to set up in the mainland. But now, since June 2021, the authorities have relaxed this requirement. The requirement of UAE national has been slashed for many an activity. As Abdulaziz mentioned, for nearly 1,500 activities, the requirement of UAE national has been completely removed. For example, a limited liability company, which is the first option here. Earlier days, a minimum 51% shareholder was to be a UAE national. As an expatriate, we could be only a 49% shareholder, but that's been relaxed now for many activities, and expatriate can be the 100% shareholder. Similarly, for the next option, for example, a branch of a foreign company or a sole establishment or a partnership firm, the requirement was that you need to appoint a UAE national as a service agent. So what the service agent means is that he becomes your representative in the labor and the immigration department. So these were worries with overseas investors had when they came to UAE. Now the authorities have relaxed this requirement. There is no requirement to have a UAE national as a 51% shareholder for more than 1,500 activities. Similarly, the requirement of the service agent for a branch of a foreign company or a sole establishment has been waived off for many activities. So one unique feature when you set up a business in the Dubai mainland is that the choice of structure, you cannot choose the structure what you want. The structure is that it will depend upon what activity you are into. For example, on a very high level, there are 3 types of licenses issued by the authorities. The first one is a trading license, second one is an industrial license, and third one is a service license. So if you are a business who are into trading or an industrial, your option will be a limited liability LLC company only. And if you are a service entity, for example, you're a consulting firm, your option is you can either register it as a branch of a foreign company or as a sole establishment. That is how the structuring of licensing is done. So the key takeaway here is that if you're a business who want to register it in the mainland, do business without any restrictions with people and companies registered in the UAE, your ideal option will be setting up in the mainland. And second point is that your structure, what structure you choose, it depends upon the activity of the company. So these are the 2 key takeaways when you consider setting up of a business in the mainland. Now, moving on to my next point, the second major type of setups which can be done, these are free zone companies. So free zone in UAE, these are self-regulated jurisdictions in various parts of the UAE. There are nearly 40 free zones where you can set up your business in the UAE. Now, what is the advantage for setting up of a business in a free zone? Is it as an expatriate, we can be the 100% owner in these type of companies, and an entity when it is registered in the free zone, what most of the free zone regulations state is that post your registration, your companies are exempted from corporate or personal tax for a period of 25 to 50 years. Now, the next point is on depending upon what sort of structure you want. Unlike in the mainland, in the free zone, you are free to select what sort of structure you want. You can set it up as a free zone limited LLC company with a minimum of 1 and maximum of 50 shareholders. These shareholders can be individuals or a corporate. You can consider setting up of a branch of a local company and also branch of a foreign company. The third type is a freelance permit, which are given for professionals. Now, I've explained what is establishing a business in the mainland and what is establishing a business in a free zone. So what are the difference for businesses? The free zone regulation, what it states is that if you're a free zone company, your sales within that free zone, no problem, you can do the business. Business outside the free zone, outside of UAE, no problem. But if you have to provide any business in the mainland for people outside the free zone boundary, it has to be either through an agent or a distributor. So who an agent is? Agent is these companies which are registered in the mainland. You can either appoint one of these companies and through those companies, you can provide your services to the mainland, or subject to the approval of the economic department, which is the licensing authorities in the mainland, you can register a branch of your free zone entities. So the key takeaway for the second option is, as an expatriate, we can be the 100% owner. Choice of structure, it purely depends upon your business requirement. And if have to, the only restriction is that the regulation states you can do freely do business within the free zone, overseas, any part of the world, no problem, you can do it. But if you have to do a business in the mainland, it has to be either to an agent or a distributor, or you will have to register a branch of your free zone company in the mainland. This is subject to the approval of the mainland authorities. Now, moving on to the next key element you will have to consider when setting up of a business in the UAE. Be it establishing an entity in the mainland or register a company in the free zone, you need to register some sort of facilities from the authorities. Like, the options available are, your first option is there are number of business centers options available, be it in the free zone or in the mainland. There are office facilities available with different sizes in the free zone and also in the mainland. All the free zones provide office size with different sizes. The third is warehousing. For example, if you are a business who are into logistics or storing of goods and import re-export, those options are available. There are also warehouses where you can set up small industrial unit. These options are available across the mainland and in most of the free zones. The fourth option is a plot of land. So plot of land is, if suppose you are into a manufacturing business, you want to rent out a plot of land. The authorities in the mainland and also in the free zone, they do provide long-term lease wherein you can rent a piece of land from them and construct your own warehouse. Generally, these leasing of plots is for a longer duration, 10, 15, 20 years. It depends upon the negotiation what you have with either in the mainland or with the free zone authorities. Now, this is with regard to the office space. Now, moving on to my third structure, which is establishing a business as an offshore company in free zone. So what are these type of companies? As the term suggests, offshore company, these are for overseas business only. Such type of companies, you cannot do any business within the UAE, but overseas you can do business. For example, you have a buyer from China. You have a seller from China, and you have a buyer from, example, UK, US, or any part of the world, and you want to do some business with an entity. You can register a free zone offshore entity in the free zone, do the business through these offshore companies, do the invoicing. You can open a bank account and receive money for these type of companies. The only requirement what the authorities say is that you can do overseas business, be it trading, be it consulting, without any restrictions. Within UAE, you cannot do any business at all. You can open a bank account for these companies and do the overseas business. Now, since you cannot do any business in the UAE, you're not permitted to have an office or an employee in these type of structures. So it's a pure vehicle for overseas business and overseas trading or consulting business. People also use these type of structures for investment and holding vehicles also. There are 3 jurisdictions in the UAE where you can set up these type of companies, which is Jebel Ali offshore, Ras Al Khaimah offshore, and also Ajman offshore. So it's only in these 3 places you can set up these type of offshore companies. Now, on a very high level, I gave you the details of the 3 different types of setups which can be done in the UAE. Now, how do you identify which is the appropriate structure? We are listed on 4 points here. What all business have to first list it down, then identify which is the appropriate vehicle for you. First is your nature of activity. Second is your area of operation, as I mentioned, whether it is in the mainland, free zone, or a combination of mainland and overseas, that you will have to list it down. Requirement of your infrastructure facility, whether it is an office facility you're looking at, whether you're looking at what sort of number of visas you're looking at. And the fourth is location preferences. Once you list down these requirements, then it will be easy for you to identify what is the appropriate structure, which is the appropriate place for you to register your entity. Now, the next question will be, what will be the fees for registration and time frame? As I told you, there are 40 plus free zones. All these 7 emirates have got its own economic departments where you can register it in the mainland. So the cost for registration, the government fees for registration, purely depends upon the place of registration. Similarly, the time frame for registration depends upon the place of registration and the activity. So for example, there are some general activities like trading activities where it is easily possible for you to register an entity. But if it is, for example, a construction activity, or you would like to set up a hospital in the UAE, there it won't be a straightforward registration process. You will also have to get approval from multiple authorities to get this license to operate, and hence those timeline will vary. So this is on a very, very high level. What are the different types of structures in the UAE, and how does one identify which is the appropriate structure? Now, moving on to a couple of other points. So the other point, what people always have to think about is when they are planning to come to the UAE, what are the visas options available? I just quickly listed down a few points. I'll not take much time on it. The first one is a transit visa, which, for example, if people prefer UAE as a transit point, the immigration authorities here issues transit visas, which varies from 1 to 14 days. Second is tourist visa. Suppose an expatriate wants to visit UAE on a tourist visa to see the place, to know what the country is. They are provided with two types of two tourist visa, one which is valid for 30 days and second which is valid for 90 days. Both these visas are renewable visas. Now, the most important categories of visas is the residence visas. So what are these types? There are many types of residence visa. I'll just explain you all those things. Students visa. So generally, students visas are for students who join schools or colleges here. They are provided with these visas by the respective colleges or respective schools. The duration of these visas generally is until the completion of their course. The second is employment visa. So this is applicable when you set up a business here and you want to have employees based here. For those employees, you can get an employment visa. The general validity of these employment visas are between 2 to 3 years, depending upon the place of registration. There are fixed requirements by the authorities. Once you fulfill that requirement, you can get an employment visa. Now, the next category of visa is dependent visa. These are for people resident in the UAE. For example, an employee gets an employment visa. Now he wants to sponsor his family. So he has got that option to sponsor his direct family members, be it his wife, be it his kids, mother or father. So there are certain requirements put down by the authorities. Once you fulfill those requirements, you will be an employee, will be, once he gets his employment visa, will be able to sponsor his dependents. Now, the next category of visa under here is remote work visa. So this is something which is new, which has come up. This is basically, for example, an overseas employee who's under remote visa, or who's under remote working, who wants to base in the UAE and continue working. For these type of people, subject they fulfill their certain requirement, they will be provided with a remote work visa. Now, the other two visas are also relatively new type of visas. Earlier days, be it an investor, be it an employee, the validity of visas was for 2 to 3 years, depending upon the place of registration of their companies. Now that has been changed. The government has come up with 5-year and 10-year visas for people. So subject they fulfill certain requirements. So if you fulfill those requirements, investors are eligible for visas either for 5 years or the 10 years. Now, the last category of visas is retirement visa. So what previously was happening is that no matter what age the person is, if he wants to be a resident in the UAE, he had to be dependent on setting up of a business and only then get a visa. But with this retirement visa, for example, and any expatriate, any individual who's 55 plus year old, if he fulfills certain requirement put out by the authorities, he can get a long-term residence visa and be a resident of UAE without having any business in the mainland. So this is a very high-level overview of what are the different visas option available in the UAE. On my last slide, I'll just quickly touch base on the banking in the UAE. So Central Bank is a banking regulatory authority of the UAE. They are the one who are formulating and implementing of banking, credit, and monetary policies. In UAE, there are 23 local and foreign banks. Besides the normal conventional banking, UAE also offers Islamic banking. There are different types of bank account which is available for individuals and also UAE. I have listed down few of the top accounts. The first one is saving account, which is for individuals, which can be opened up in all the banks across the UAE. Second is salary account. There are many banks which provide zero balance account for employees who are under employment visa. The third is fixed deposit account. This is applicable for individuals and also businesses. So either you can open a fixed deposit account under your individual name, or if you're a business and you want to open a fixed deposit account, that is also possible. And the last two accounts are generally for business, be it current account or business accounts. This can be opened across different banks in the UAE. The requirement for opening the bank account, though there is a standard list provided by the central bank of what is the minimum document you'll have to provide. Different banks have got different additional requirement, and also the minimum balance requirement for the business account. It depends upon banks. banks have got zero balance account to minimum 150,000 dirhams also. So it all depends upon which bank you want to open the account. So this is on a very, very, very high level on different types of setups of visas in the UAE and also banking in the UAE. If you have any questions, you can please get in touch with our SLA office. We'll be happy to address the queries. Brian, on our next topic, tax, Brian, who's our expert, will take it this.
Thank you, Deepak. That was very interesting. I think as everybody can see, there's a little bit of complexity to work your way through, and it's very important to get the right structure when setting up in the UAE. But we've got a very good team in the UAE to guide you through all that. So if you do have any questions, please get in touch with us. Anyway, let's have a look at the tax system in the UAE. Tax is never anybody's favorite subject, but if you are setting up a business in a new jurisdiction, it is very important to understand how your business and yourself and your employees will be taxed. Now, fortunately, the UAE is actually a very attractive place when it comes to tax. It's attractive to individuals and businesses, and the reason is we actually have very, very few taxes. And where we do have taxes, the rates tend to be very low. There's some regulation that has to be dealt with that is linked to tax, but generally the tax burden in the UAE is fairly light. So if we can have the next slide, please, Deepak. Yeah. For individuals, first of all, it really is the lightest of touches. So there is no personal income tax. There are no payroll taxes, deductions for social security or anything like that for expats. There's no capital gains tax, and there is no restriction on movement of funds in and out of the country. So it makes it as I say, very straightforward for individuals. Obviously, expats, depending on the tax laws in their home country, might be taxed there. That's always a possibility. But in the UAE itself, generally individuals are not affected directly by taxes. Now, for businesses, again, really, it's minimal taxation compared to most countries around the world. For most businesses, there is no corporate income tax. There is a small amount of corporate income tax or small amount of law for oil companies and branches of foreign banks, but other businesses don't pay corporate income tax. There's no withholding tax. And again, there's no restriction on those movements of funds. What we do have are indirect taxes. So where the tax on business starts to bite a little bit is with value-added tax, which was introduced in 2018, excise tax, also introduced fairly recently. We have customs duties. And the final point at the bottom there, which I will touch on later, we do have some tax-related regulations. So these are not things where you'll actually have to pay any taxes, but you will have to meet certain tests and make certain reports in connection with tax. VAT. So VAT is the main tax. It is structured, it is based on EU VAT. So anybody who's familiar with EU VAT will be familiar with the UAE tax system. And actually, it's very similar to the VAT system in Israel. The difference with VAT in the UAE and most of the rest of the world is actually the rate, because we have a very, very low rate of 5%. So it's a single rate, 5%, and we do have some zero ratings for various social items and exemptions as well. So although we have tax and it's fairly broad, it is fairly low impact. All businesses that are established in the UAE have to register for VAT if their turnover, their taxable turnover, exceeds 375,000 dirhams, which is about 100,000 US dollars. There are some special rules for non-established businesses. So if you trade into the UAE from Israel, you just need to check whether or not you fall into a category where you have to automatically register for VAT, even though you're not in the country. Once registered for VAT, businesses make returns every month or every 3 months. A fairly simple return, not many boxes to fill in, and basically it's a matter of paying over the VAT that is being collected with a deduction for VAT that has been incurred on inputs. And the VAT system has all of the normal sorts of mechanisms you would expect, like refund schemes for business visitors and for tourists. So if we could have the next slide, Deepak.
Sorry, some problem. Sorry, give me a sec. I'm so sorry, it got stuck again.
Not to worry. While you try to sort that out, I'll start to talk about the excise tax, which is the next tax that I was going to talk about. Excise tax doesn't affect most businesses. It applies to things like fizzy drinks, sweetened drinks, and tobacco products, smoking products, vapes, that sort of thing. The rates are very high. The rates are 50% for the drinks, 100% for some smoking products. All right, we've got that there now. So this doesn't affect many businesses, but it's important to be aware that it's there. The sort of businesses that are liable to excise tax are importers and manufacturers mainly, but also when there's a rate change, it could be businesses that have a stockpile of excisable goods. Customs duty, most goods coming into the country are subject to customs duty. Generally, the rate is 5%. There are some free trade agreements, and the UAE is working on extending the network of free trade agreements. When goods come into the country, VAT and excise tax, if applicable, is also levied. And it's worth saying that some of the ports that are free zones, that Deepak talked about the free zones, they act as tax-free zones for goods imported. So it's possible to bring the goods into those zones without the payment of duty, VAT, excise, tax, until the goods come out. So it's possible to bring them in, store, pack, and even move them out without ever paying the customs duty. So that's a very useful facility for international businesses. If we move on to the next point, Deepak, I mentioned that we have some tax-related regulation. The most important of those, and all new businesses into the UAE need to be aware of this, is the economic substance regulations. What these regulations are all about, it's to stop international tax avoidance. It's to stop businesses shifting profits into the UAE in order to avoid tax on activities that are carried out elsewhere. So the basic tenet is that if a business is reporting income in the UAE, then it should have the people and the resources and the assets in the UAE to support that business, i.e. it should be a proper business. So it's not unreasonable. And what businesses have to do is they have to report to the Ministry of Finance twice a year. Firstly, they report whether or not they fall under these economic substance regulations. And then later in the year, they have to report whether or not they meet various tests. These regulations are very important because if you don't meet the tests or don't comply with the obligations, there are some very high penalties, and ultimately you can lose your trading license. So unless you comply with this, it may not be possible to trade. So it's important to know about, and it's one of those things that while you're setting up the business, you need to check out the ESR requirements. Finally, country by country reporting. This only affects very largest businesses where the ultimate parent entity is in the UAE. This is something that most international businesses are familiar with because country by country reporting is required in many places around the world. This won't affect many businesses because, as I say, it only relates to businesses where the ultimate parent entity is in the UAE. Okay. Thank you very much. Finally, before we sign off, there's great excitement in the UAE at the moment. Expo 2020, which was delayed for a year because of COVID, is currently on. It runs to the end of March. We already have many visitors, and we will have many more. And I think we have a short video just summing up what Expo is all about.
Come for the greatest global gathering in history, with countries from all over the world. Discover the world's most inventive ideas. Concrete that generates solar power, and the most sensitive radio telescope ever made. Marvel at the world's most inspiring architecture. Step into structures that produce electricity, spaces that change shape, and buildings that send messages to space. Connect with local and global experts, partners, and investors. Join business forums. Participate in thought leadership discussions. Be part of solving today's challenges. Experience the world's greatest entertainment with local and international stars, live concerts, and colorful parades. Take in inspirational art, sample exotic cuisines, and witness more than 190 countries and cultures come together in one place. Join the making of a new world. Expo 2020 Dubai.
Thank you very much. Hopefully some of you will be able to get along and visit Expo before it ends. It's a great event. So we've come to the end of our hour. We don't have a formal question and answer session, though I did see a question came up very early on, so I just will respond to that. Shmuel asked a question about opportunities there may be in the UAE for businesses partnering to get involved in opportunities around climate change and COVID research. Now, obviously, we can't go into any great detail about that, but it is worth saying that the UAE, for a number of years now, has had the green agenda very high on its list of priorities, and there's a lot of businesses involved in that. I do think particularly that may well be an area where there are opportunities for businesses to get involved. As for COVID research, I'm sure there's an awful lot going on, and there is a very useful and important healthcare sector in the UAE, and there's a lot of research and technology-led research in that area. So I think both of those areas could be good areas to be involved in. If you have any more questions, we would be delighted to hear from you. So please get in touch with us, whatever it may be. So finally, just to finish off, thanks again to BDO Israel for arranging everything and inviting us to speak. And thank you to everybody who has joined the webinar. We hope you found it useful and interesting. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.